Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer Delaney. You might recognize me as Freedom and Feathers, and today we're doing episode 2 of my new archery series. So I know a lot of y'all have been reaching out, wanting to know aiming techniques, how to aim better, how to shoot your bow, how to do trick shots. Bear with me. There is a method to my madness. I have a whiteboard here, and I know it's kind of hard to see. Recap from episode 1, which if you haven't watched, I highly encourage you to do so. Kind of gives you the lay of the land in terms of types of bows, target shooting versus hunting. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about arrows, and it's so important to know your arrows. I know at the end of the day, all of y'all are probably, rolling your eyes already, just wanting to get to how to aim and shoot better. But y'all, oh, that was a wind. But y'all, to be absolutely real with y'all, the science has already been done for us. There are experts who've already gone in and determined all the parameters that go into shooting a bow. They've given that to you on a plate, and making sure your arrows are the right length, making sure your bow is strung correctly, making sure your knocking points are accurate, making sure your bow's taken care of. Like, all these little factors could be going into messing up your shots. You could be aiming absolutely perfect, but not hitting your target because of the little things that go into preparing to shoot your bow. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started and talk about arrows. All right guys, fundamentals of an arrow: point, shaft, fletching, and knock. We'll dive a bit deeper into points later this episode. In terms of fletching though, feathers and bands are more commonly used. For traditional archers with curves and longbows, usually you'll see feathers, although bands can be a great substitute. It's just archer's preference. For compounds, more often than not, bands are on the arrows. And for crossbows, their arrows are actually called bolts, but in general, the same principles apply. So, next, draw length. Draw length might be the most critical component when it comes to determining your arrows. So what is it? It is a measurement. It is the measurement from an arrow knocking on the string at an archer's full draw to a point of reference on the bow. So I'll go ahead and do a quick draw. So at the point where my arrow is on my string to the point where it crosses my bow is your draw length. And there are really two different ways to measure, well, there's a few different ways to measure it, but two ones I would recommend. That is the calculated draw length and the ATA draw length standard. So for calculated draw length, if you have a tape measure, it's really, really easy to calculate, or one of those long cloth measuring rulers. It's also helpful if someone else can help you, but what you're going to do is you're going to full arm span, so you're going to stand with your back against a wall, and you're going to measure from tip of your middle finger to the tip of your other middle finger. Take that measurement, divide it by 2.5, and that's going to give you your draw length. In general, it's pretty safe to go ahead and round up, just to give you kind of a little bit of wiggle room, as at the end of the day, and we'll dive into this in a second, but I'm jumping the gun here, your draw length is not the same as your arrow length. So again, I'll hit that in a second. So that's one way to calculate your draw length. The other method is the ATA draw length standard method, and there's really two different points when it comes to calculating those numbers. They have what is called the pivot point draw length, which is the point where at full draw, the arrow hits this pivot point, which is the very beginning of your grip. And the second point is the opposite. So true length, pivot point. Pivot point. And more common than not, that gap is going to be about 1 3/4 inch. So if your bow has a bigger grip, then instead of doing all the way to the backside, you're going to go ahead and just add 1 3/4 to whatever the measurement is from the pivot point to the knocking point at full draw. So those are really the two best methods I recommend for calculating your draw length. And in terms of your arrow length, not the same. I'm going to repeat. Draw length is not the same as your arrow length. What you're going to do to calculate your arrow length is you're going to take your draw length and add 1 to 2 inches. And that's because we do not want the arrow to be barely resting off the shelf. We want the arrow to be at least an inch to 2 inches off the shelf in order to minimize, the arrow getting caught or accidentally falling off or any injuries that might occur when it comes to shooting a bow. So with that, types of arrows. There are a couple different types of arrows out there. More often than not, I'll be shooting with carbon, but I'll talk about the different types just so you guys can kind of have a reference to what is out there. So first, there are the solid carbon arrows, which is more often than not what I'm shooting with. Carbon has a lot of interwoven fibers, which in general make it a bit lighter. Carbon arrows will not split, but they will splinter. So if you're shooting at maybe a metal target or you hit a really solid piece of wood, just keep that in mind. Those little splinters are really annoying and they can hurt if you get enough of them in your finger. Another type of arrow is an aluminum arrow. So aluminum arrows in general are hollow And you know, the actual spine value will determine the thickness of the aluminum, in addition to the diameter of the shaft and the overall weight of the arrow. The last type of arrow that I discussed with y'all today is the wooden arrow. Generally, you don't see a lot of people shooting wooden arrows, and if they do, they're shooting longbows or recurves of lighter weight. Wooden arrows, more often than not, will split and break with powerful bows. I've shot a few of them and I love them, but just in general, the higher poundage bow you go, the more likely you're going to break your arrow. So, aerospine, what is it? Spine is a measurement of the arrow's stiffness. So in the 1930s, a man called Robert Elmer coined the term archer's paradox. And this referred to the fact that back then an archer would actually point off center in order to hit the center target, due to the bending of an arrow and energy stored as it releases from the bowstring. So modern day technology has found ways for us to compensate for this, and that includes aerospine. So in general, the lighter poundage that you're shooting, you're going to want less stiffness, and the higher poundage, you're going to want more stiffness. And the way to determine the level of stiffness is through the spine value. An example would be 100 spine value would indicate that it is a very stiff arrow versus a 500 not so stiff. There are some great resources online, and I'll be sure to include some following this video, where you can go and you use the poundage that you're drawing in addition to your draw length to determine kind of where you should be at with your aerospine. I'll include them at the end of the video, but definitely check out those resources, as they're going to give you the most accurate idea of what you should be shooting. So the last thing we're going to discuss today is types of points. So I have a couple examples for you guys today. Keep in mind that this is a flat or blunt point, very much exaggerated version. Generally speaking, they're going to be like a typical point in size, but this is used for archery tag, and there's not going to be any damage. Next ones that you'll often see is the bullet point and the field point. So bullet point, more often used by target shooters in addition to the field point, but bullet's going to cause less damage, very, very minimal damage while you're practicing with your targets. Field point's a bit sharper, so they're going to cause a bit more. Broadheads are used specifically for hunting. Oops, almost lost that. For hunting, and there's so many different types. You can get 2-blade, 3-blade, 4-blade broadheads of varying sizes and shapes. So I have a couple just for example to show y'all. Like I said, varying in sizes, and ranges won't let you practice with these. They're specific for hunting. So definitely recommend either the bullet or field point if you guys are looking into getting to more target shooting. So I hope this video helped. Please be sure to subscribe. I'll be posting another video next week, diving a bit more and getting closer to what I know y'all want to hear more about, which is